Welcome students for online classes. Today we'll continue with the chapter 2 under statistics, that was about collection of data. So in the earlier session we had studied about the census and sample survey, which are the two modes of collection of data. So in this session we'll study about the topic sample survey in detail. So under what is sample survey? Where you take the information or the collection of information which is done in group, that is known as sample survey. Under sample survey we had studied about sampling, we had studied about the merits, demerits, and even the difference between census and sample survey. So in this particular session we'll study about random sampling, that is about the types of the sample survey, that is random sample and non-random sample. So the first thing about random sampling. What does random sampling? As the name itself tells, random, where you do the sampling process, where you take the groups randomly. So the meaning is, if the sample is selected in such a way that each time one unit is selected and each unit has an equal chance of being selected, is known as random sampling. For example, I'll take there are 26 alphabets, so I'll take everybody as Mr. A, Mr. B, Miss C, like that. So there are 26 students in my class, so I randomly select anyone to tell any of my answer. Say for example, I will ask Mr. C that what is sampling. So Mr. C will get up and tell the answer. So at this particular point of time, after telling the answer, each and everybody in my class, that is all the 26 students, have the equal chance that I can ask the question next. So I can even ask Miss C, I can even ask Mr. D, I can even ask Mr. Z, I can even ask Miss M. So at this particular point of time, everybody in the class or everybody in a particular sample has the equal opportunity of getting selected. That is known as random sampling. So there are two types of random sampling. First is about the lottery method and second is about the random table method. Under lottery method, what happens? All the units of the universe are represented at one place in the form of chits, and someone is asked to take out the required number of units as lottery system. I'll take the same example that I will be having 26 students in my class, so I will be writing everybody's name in the chit. At this particular point of time, I'll pick the lot where I will be asking the same questions. I'll be asking the question. So now I will not call Mr. A, Mr. B, or Mr. C. So at this particular point of time, what will I do? I pick the chits where there will be no biased thing. For example, I may ask the people or the student who know everything, or I may ask who is naughty in the class. So when I pick the lots, now when I take the lottery system, I will be not knowing who is there in that particular chit. So this will be a non-biased thing, which will be a better thing under random sampling. So does lottery method give you a random sample? Whether will it give a random sample or not? Yes, the lottery method will give the random sampling. So how will it give the random sampling? So this is a particular description where how the particular random sampling under lottery system is made. So every item has a chance of being selected like random sampling. So I will be having 26 chits in my ball. So every 26 students are allowed, or every 26 items are ready or are being selected in this particular, have a chance of being selected. Okay, that was the first point. Next, what happens after? What will I do? All the units of the population are allotted separate numbers and they are written on separate slips of identical shapes and sizes. First thing, what happens? First, everybody, the names, first what will I do? I take down everybody's name, Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C, Mr. D, everybody till Z, and I will, what is very much important here, the identical shapes and sizes of my chits is very much important. So there will be no biased decision, or there will be no biased information or sampling which is made here. So I will be writing everybody's name. I will be putting the same thing in the bowl with the same identical, that is the same shape and the size. Later on, what will I do? Later, the slips are put in the box and the container is mixed thoroughly. Why is it mixed thoroughly? So that I will be knowing. So last name whose had I written, I will be writing Mr. Z's name in the last, so that will be in the upper section. So I will be knowing whose name will be in the last. So what am I supposed to do? I need to mix everything thoroughly. Later on, what happens? Later on, the selection is being randomly made from the box. The slips drawn or selected will constitute the random sampling. By this, what happens? I will mix the ball thoroughly. Lastly, I will pick a chit. So at this particular point of time, whose name will be occurred, that will be the random sampling under the lottery system. So this is about how the lottery system gives you the random sampling. Next thing is about the random table method. It is a number of tables have been generated to guarantee equal probability of section of every individual unit in the population. So what happens here under random table method? I'll give you a small example. Um, there will be a quiz competition. Okay, at this particular point of time, there will be many schools coming from various places, so everybody will be given a table and 4 chair for their particular school. There will be a segregation of many schools. So at this particular point of time, one particular section or one quiz area will be of randomly picked tables. So at this particular point of time, what will I do? I randomly pick maybe this particular school, uh, maybe school A, maybe school B, school C. This is the random table method, where I select randomly schools, where I ask the quiz questions to the random school. So this is about the random table method. So now we studied about the random sampling. Under random sampling, the types are of lottery system and random table method. Now the second thing under the types of sample survey, that is about non-random sampling. Now what does non-random sampling tells? All the units of the population do not have equal chance of being selected, and convenience or judgment of the investigator plays an important role in selection of the sample. So here what will I do? I will take the same example. Say for example, Mr. P will be doing a mischief thing in my class. So at this particular point of time, what will I do? I can either send that person outside my class, or I can make him stand, or I can ask him any questions, or I can ask him to write anything on the board. So this is non-random sampling, where I ask any particular individual to do any particular work, where there will be no random thing, where I know that that particular person has done something mischievous thing, or that particular person is wrong at that particular point of time. So where the judgment or the investigator, here who is the investigator? Me, the teacher is the investigator, where I judge that person for doing the wrong things in my class while taking the class. So this is about non-random sampling. So under non-random sampling, there are errors. So how will the error occur? There are two kinds of error: sampling error and non-sampling error, where under sampling error we had studied in the earlier session. So what is sampling error? It is a difference between the sample result and the census result under the same circumstances. Same circumstances in the sense, for census you take the whole area in the sense, when I take into consideration my country, I'll take into consideration the whole country. But when I come to sample survey, what will I do? I take only one particular area. For example, when I come to Kushal Nagar, a census is being done overall area. Later on, you want to do a sample survey on that area. So you come to Kushal Nagar, you do the sample survey. At this particular point of time, you compare your results with the census results. So there will be no much familiarity. So this is known as sampling error, when there will be differences between the census result and the sample result. That is known as sampling error. So what happens under sampling error? When sample method is used, we cannot expect that we get the same result, as that there will be a different result under census also. So the next thing is about the differences which comes under sampling and which will give the wrong conclusions when you take the sample. Maybe when they can even, you might think that they can even be the wrong results under sensors. So the next thing is how can you turn these wrong results into 0% of results. So as we increase the size of the area, what is done under census, whole country is taken into consideration. But here what under sample we have taken only Kushalnagar. But now what can we do to reduce the errors? We should take a larger thing into consideration. Now I'll come to the whole Kodagu. Okay, till now I was taken only Kushalnagar as consideration under sample survey. Now I will take the whole Kodagu, which constitutes of many areas and many places. So by this what happens, there will be a slowly negativity, or the errors can be minimized under the sampling error. This is about sampling error. Now the next thing is about non-sampling error. So what happens under non-sampling error? Non-sampling error are more serious than sampling error, because a sampling error can be minimized by taking a larger sample. It is difficult to minimize non-sampling error by taking a large sample. Every census can contain non-sampling error. So what happens under non-sampling error? It is very much serious when it is compared to the sampling error. Why? Because under sampling error you could have minimized your errors, but here under non-sampling error you cannot minimize the error. Why can't you minimize the error? Because of these under certain circumstances. First is the error of data acquisition. So what happens, where maybe when it is sample survey or when it is census, you go to your you go to a house, you ask that particular person's name, his age, his wife's name, his children's name, everything. He might even give you the wrong information. So at this particular point of time, at the process of data acquisition, there can be errors if the person gives you the wrong. As told in the next point, non-response error. What happens when the people is not willing to respond you any kind of information, or during the collection process, if you ask where do you work to that particular person, if he is not willing to tell you the answer, he might tell that I live in house, I won't work. Yeah, but in spite of that he might be working in any particular office. So this is also non-response error, which comes under non-sampling, which is very much serious when it is compared to the sampling error. And lastly, about the sampling bias. So what happens, the sampling bias occurs when the sampling plan is such that some members of the target population could not possibly be included in the sample. What happens here? For example, I will be knowing, as I am from Madikeri, I know Madikeri as a whole. So at this particular point of time, I can go to any particular area just because my friends and my relatives lives there, and I can take the proper samples from there. In spite of that, what can I do? As my friends and relatives live there, I know each and everybody. So at this particular point of time, I sit in my house, I do all the necessary works by sitting in my house without asking them any kind of question. So by here what happens, here the sampling bias will increase, where I will be doing any particular work which I like, which is not approved by the government, which is not approved by my officer. This is known as the sampling bias. Okay, so these are some of the non-sampling error which will occur because of these circumstances. So the assignment part: does the lottery method always give you the random sample? Explain. Briefly explain sampling errors. What is random sampling? Explain briefly. Thank you, students.